This podcast is brought to you by Australia's LGBTQIA+ community media organisation, Joy. Keep Joy on air by becoming a member, a subscriber, or donate. Head to joy.org.au. Joy, a diverse sound for a diverse community.
Hey you! Yeah, you, in the car. Did you know that a big portion of people who listen to Joy in the car, just like you? Right now, times are really tough financially, and without your support, Joy may not be around to make your drive around Melbourne fun. So tell your siblings, your workmates, heck, even wind down your window and tell someone else stuck in the traffic to head over to joy.org.au and help us build Joy Nation by making a donation. Joy, your voice, your radio station.
This is Saturday Magazine.
You are listening to Saturday Magazine on Joy 94.9, radio made by us and for us.
For us. Now, our next guest is Luke Hilakari from the Victorian Trades Hall Council. First off, Luke, welcome.
Good morning, Macca and Tass.
Good morning.
Now, you're in isolation, I believe.
I am in isolation, so I'm can't see my family right now, but I tested negative, and I think I should be out of here by Monday.
Yeah.
Why are you in isolation as a matter of interest, Luke?
So I was at the CFMEU building when you saw that siege take place by that sort of angry mob, I don't know, what is it, Monday, week ago now. That became a Tier 1 site, and very quickly I got a call from the department who were fantastic, and so I need to isolate, and so I'm in isolation. So I had my first test, it came through negative. I have my next test tomorrow, and fingers crossed all will go well.
Fantastic. Fake unions. Perhaps explain to us, Luke, what this is and why you think it's happening, and to what extent is it happening?
Yeah, so this is a pretty new thing that's come out of Queensland. What we've found, and it's sort of a shameful thing, because what people are doing is pretending to be something they're not to take money from workers. And when I talk about money, it could be up to sort of $450 a year. So it's not a small amount. What a couple of people who have been closely associated with the Liberal and National parties in Queensland and New South Wales have done is they've set up associations of sorts, but they don't resemble anything like the unions that you would know. And people need to keep their eyes open, because what they're essentially doing is giving their money over to somebody for really not a lot of purpose. So if you think about a union, unions are really old, established democratic institutions. Like, they were around before the state of Victoria became a state. Some of our oldest unions were around in the 1850s. How can you spot like a new fake union? Well, if they've been established in the last 2 years, they're probably not real. The other thing you should be looking for is, are they democratic? So unions are run by their members for their members. They will have councils elected by members, and you elect the secretary, you get a vote on all this, and you get to determine the policies and directions of your own union. These things don't do any of that. So there's a couple of things you can look at really quickly and say, all right, are they union, are they not? Are they new? Are they democratic? If they're not either of those two things, you should be very suspicious.
But unions need to be registered as unions, don't they? As trade unions?
Yeah, absolutely. And so registration is really important. What it does, it gives us a set of laws and rules in which we can engage employers or take action or represent people. These people are not registered. So in no way would these people be recognised as a union. And what's happened up in Queensland recently, the Fair Work Commission up there, their Industrial Relations Commission, has found that these aren't unions under any state law. And so if you hand your money over to these groups, and they've given a really odd name, red unions, if you give your money over to them, you can't be properly represented by them either.
Oh.
Well, they're not unions. I mean, they're not trade unions as we would understand a trade union, and they're not registered, Macca.
Yeah, so do people get taken in by this, Luke? I mean, I'm not going to make a remark about where the people are, but that they might be. But they get taken in by
they are. Absolutely. And it hasn't been a lot of people, but getting the alert out to the world right now, I think it's really important. And they're particularly doing it right now. So recently they've set up a couple of more unions in the last 2 months to affect teachers and police officers and nurses and doctors. And they've set it up right now because of the debate going around vaccination. So they're looking really to target union members who might be vaccine hesitant or be in opposition to getting a vaccine and saying, hey, we're a group of people who will represent you on this. Even though they can't properly represent you, there's a term for these type of people, and they're grifters. They're looking for opportunities to take people in and pretend to be something they're not, to deliver something they actually can't. So the red flag should be up that if you go to a site called like Red Unions, you will see a list of unions listed under there. That never happens, right? Unions represent professions and they do it proudly. And if you go to a legitimate union website, you will see a lot of information about your industry that is really helpful to you. The other thing that's a telltale sign about unions is that they'll have an infrastructure in there, and a really important infrastructure. So they'll have organisers, they'll have lawyers that represent you, they'll have a place for you to call, so call centre workers who are trained to answer your calls. These groups don't have that. I'm worried that what's happening is that workers are handing money over, and not a lot of them, but they are, and we don't know where this money goes. It's not democratic, it doesn't get reported, it's not getting audited. Like, your money is essentially being handed to a stranger for very little purpose. Now,
look, this might be completely out of order and an inappropriate question, but can you name them?
Look, yes, I can. They're broadly called, under a site, Red Unions.
Red Unions?
And under it they have... I know. It's like they've picked a sort of like a 1950s throwback about, sort of red communism. So even from the name itself, you can tell that it's not quite right. But under that, they have a list of associations. I'll just see if I can pull up the list of them now. But they're trying to mimic some of the names of existing unions to try to, I don't know, for a better word, sucker people in. So if I pull up some of their names, it's like the Nurses Professional Union of Australia.
Oh, dear.
Now, that's not the Australian Nurses Midwifery Federation.
No.
Which the Teachers Professional Association of Queensland.
Oh, dear.
Now, if someone told me they're a professional association, there's things attached with a professional association. Registration, insurance, but also training. None of that. The Australian Medical Professional Society, so they're targeting doctors. The Teachers Professional Association of Australia, like the teachers' unions, the Australian Education Union, which most people know, or the Independent Education Union, the IU, for private schools. Most people know these groups. So they're looking to sort of paint themselves as a professional organisation, of which they are not.
I don't know what to say about any of this. I find it quite disturbing.
And the challenge is, isn't it, Luke, is that people, it's that old element, people, I read it on Google, so it must be right, or I looked it up on the internet, it must be right.
Or I saw it on social media.
Yeah, I saw it on anti-social media, and it must be right. How do you, as an organisation, what's the best way for you to counter this? I mean, obviously talking about it is thing, but what's the best way to counter it? Is the federal government concerned about this, or do they think it's okay?
Yeah, so it would be useful at some stage for us to talk to state and federal governments about legislation around if people are pretending to be something they're not. Talking about it on shows like this is fantastic. Like, it's probably the best way to get information out there, because a lot of people have some amazing experiences with unions and making sure that they improve their working life. It's sad that we're seeing probably across society people setting up organisations that are fake. To scamming type organisations that try to take people in. We're all getting these days, text messages that you're missing your package, or phone calls about changing. I feel like this is just another area in which they've gone. The website isn't super slick, but you could be taken in by it.
I'd actually like to see legislation that stops untruth information from being published, and I'd also like to see a bit of a ban on some of those horrible texts that I'm getting from the UAP.
Well, I couldn't believe I couldn't agree with you more strongly on that. It's sad we're in a sort of a world now that feels to be a little bit post-truth. That's really hurt some of our democratic institutions, like the fourth estate with the media. People need to have trusted, reliable sources, like Joy FM, where you can hear people talk about issues in a factual way. How about that?
Luke, you called us Joy FM. My God, it's Joy 94.9. You're going to be taken out and dealt with.
All right, take me out the back. Sorry, guys.
Luke, thank you very much for your time this morning. Just to finish up, we have a comment from one of our listeners who says, so many people have become experts in politics and get a degree from Facebook University. I think that sums up the conversation very nicely. Luke Kalahari, who's the secretary of the Victorian Trades Hall Union, or Trades Hall Council, I should say, a great discussion about fake unions.
You've been listening to Saturday Magazine on Australia's first and only gay and lesbian radio station, Joy 94.9.
Thanks for listening to another Joy podcast, brought to you by Australia's LGBTQIA+ community media organisation, Joy. Help us keep Joy on air. Head to joy.org.au. Joy, a diverse sound for a diverse community.